Hello, family. Welcome to another episode of Experts Interview on Role Model Maker. I am your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me I have a very special guest. I have Miss Sandy Hadrick. She and I met last week, and I loved her message and how she shows up in the world. And I thought that her information is important for our audience and relevant, so I decided to ask her to come here and tell us a little bit more about herself, her story, how she got here today, and basically um, what her expertise are. So without further ado, Sandy, welcome to the show. I thank you for taking the time out to be here with us today, and love to hear your all that you have to say. So take it away.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ella, for having me. I so appreciate it. So, a little bit about me. I've spent the last 29 years in public education. And during that time, at one point, I was teaching first grade and I saw all my students really actively engaged. And we were actually studying ants. So the kids were watching and they were writing in their journals as the ants were moving in the little colonies we had. And then they were grabbing books, they were reading about ants. And I really was thinking as I was watching all the kids actively engaging in their learning, how could I bring this to families? Because I want parents to see this and to be able to experience this with their own children. So at that time, I decided to start this science literacy bags where kids brought these bags home and got to experience some of the things we were doing in the classroom. And one of the parents shared with me at that point, they were taking they're in their front yard and they were watching these ants and she was doing an observation and all that. And her next door neighbor came over and said, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm observing these ants." Well, it turned out he actually worked for a company that what studied fire ants. In Texas here we have fire ants that can be pretty they can hurt when they bite, so
Right.
and they can actually hurt a lot of our crops and stuff, so and animals. So he was really intrigued with watching her as she was really investigating these ants. And at that time she was a first grader and now she's actually a scientist.
Wow.
So just being able to really impact children is really something that I love to do. So that's kind of really how that started. And then as I continued on with my career, and I really wanted to get my message out there just more beyond my classroom and beyond the school district I worked with, and really help families, especially during this time with math and science. Because I feel that kids right now, especially with them either going through distance learning or even really learning at school, is very different now. And I really want to help support families during this time. And I just feel like I really have this gift that I want to share with the world of really how to get kids excited about math and science.
I love it. This is really, really important, especially during these times. I was just talking to someone, and I mentioned that how a lot of the school systems have pretty much transferred what they were doing before in classroom to now just doing it in front of a screen. And when I speak to moms that have homeschooled for many years or have seen their kids grow up being homeschooled, they said that they always say that their homeschooling experience or their studying is very different than what the school system right now is doing. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing because that love of learning is essential and the kids have it. And it's a shame to see that lost. It's basically what drives people to improve themselves as they get older. And if you lose that, that really limits your potential. So this is one way to bring that to them, basically. So thank you
Right.
for saying that. So what other things have you seen through your experience about what you're describing, and why is it important, basically, to have this?
So, why I think it's really important, kind of what you touched upon, is that really right now, I do feel like kids are really on electronic devices way too much. And and schools are trying to figure out how to educate children right now. And I agree with you. I feel like they're trying to do something that was in person. They're trying to just switch it over to virtual. And then these kids are just on the computers way too long or on some type of device. So, really, what I want to do is I want to get kids off that device and really get them to explore their environment and really um, learn things through those hands-on experiences that they're not really getting right now. And that's one of the things that I really am passionate about, because I feel like when you give kids those hands-on experiences, they make connections that they're
Mhm.
not necessarily going to make through a computer,
True.
or through a device. So that's one of the things. And I feel like too right now, um, parents are like really like I feel like they can also feel really overwhelmed right now. Some of our parents are kind of homeschooling, but it may not have been by choice. They kind of got kind of put into that position.
Correct.
So they might just be a little bit lost and, well, I don't even understand how my kids are learning math right now because it's different from the way they were taught,
Right.
or really even knowing about how to get their kids to really engage with their environment and really like look at things through a scientific way of looking at things versus just again behind the screen.
Right.
And so really I really want to help, like really just have a brighter future with our children and with parents. That's really what I'd like to do and get my message out there.
I love it. I love it. And the other part that sometimes we forget is that parents didn't necessarily come with an automatic built-in education degree on education on
Right.
teaching. So that's the other part, that there's all this training and knowledge that we have accumulated, that the teachers have, that the parents don't necessarily have. It's just what they were exposed to when they were growing up, either through school or their parenting, or being parented, basically. So definitely. Um,
Right.
so so in your experience, when it comes to learning, when it comes to the current situation, what are the three challenges that you see or you hear people struggle with?
So one of them, kind of what we just talked about, was that kids are on the computers for way too long or extended amount of time, and that parents may be really feeling overwhelmed with distance learning, trying to figure out how to educate their own child. Like you said, they didn't get an education degree, so they may really be struggling with, how do I teach my child, you know, and especially, in regards to math and science. And then because parents tend to be a little bit more, they might feel more comfortable with teaching them reading versus that, when you get more into math and science.
Mhm.
So, and then the other thing is really, worried about, like, the parents might also really be worried about the gaps that are starting to form in math, particularly because math tends to build upon one another. So does science, but math tends to be something that people tend to hone in a lot on, even though science is just as important, because you know we need scientists to help, just to help us, like especially through COVID and all these things that are happening, right? So we need scientists out there too. But those gaps start forming, and I always call it, it's almost like Swiss cheese. So when those gaps form with children, it's really hard sometimes to figure out how to close those gaps, especially if they start having multiple gaps. So that's one of the things that I feel like parents might really be struggling with. And then also, when you're now at home and you're trying to educate your child or your child on distance learning, there might be like tons of distractions going on at home. And then learning also might feel more like a chore versus something that's exciting, and
Right.
they can't wait to go do it, right? And that's one of the some of the challenges that parents may be facing right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and having said that, what tips or I guess secrets do you have for people to overcome this? I know that uh, making it fun and gamification is one of those ways of doing that, especially for kids, but without use of screens, of course. Um, so, uh, so tell us what your recommendations are in these challenges to overcome these challenges.
So some of it is getting out and really having kids really explore their environment. So even if they go out and they go out to their front yard, and like I said, even observing an ant pile and watching how ants interact with one another and are moving, and how they go about carrying even the food like into their ant mound, and having kids actually writing about what they're observing. So that right there is one thing you can do. You can also have kids go outside and look at, if there's trees, looking at the trees and looking at the bark, and actually um, really like looking at what they notice about the bark, what it feels like, and then even what they notice, even as a tree changes over time as well. Those are some things just that are just right outside your environment. And then also, then I feel like too with math, and then it is like creating, just doing some games with them, because if you play games with kids and they're it just makes it more fun, and then kids are learning when they don't even realize they're learning, because it becomes fun. So, and on my Facebook page, I have some recommendations for like some really fun math games that you can do with your kids, and that can help them with learning addition, multiplication, those kind of things, but it's done in a game. So kids, again, they have fun while they're doing it. So those are some of the things. And then that I just feel like you can do at home that kind of put some more of that, getting them off the screen and kind of, because really what I want to see is I want to see kids engaged, excited, and it's kind of like like fun, and the parents are having fun and they're making those connections with their children, so it doesn't feel like a chore or everyone's wanting to pull their hair out, right? So, and then that learning can just happen, and you can really empower your child, and then they're more motivated, and then they might want to go and do some more researching on things, or might want to read things about whatever they're interested in, and really kind of help, just continue that empowerment and that lifelong learning.
That's awesome. Actually, I was just going to mention that now this might be more difficult for kids who have been in front of screens a lot more because what it does is it changes your brain chemistry. So motivating yourself to do something that involves more being active could be more challenging. But then, of course, the longer you're away from the screen and the more active you are, the easier it becomes. But nevertheless, I wanted to remind the parents in our audience that the kids look at the world differently than us with our eyes that have seen, say, a tree or nature a million times. They look at it and they're still discovering, and they're in awe and they're amazed by little things that we might have seen or we might have learned long ago that now they might have lost its newness to us. But when you go to the nature and you look at the tree bark, like you were saying, or you look at how the different things kind of weave into each other and form nature as it is, you actually create that connection through your children's eyes with the nature as well. So it's definitely important. So thank you for bringing that up. So Sandy, tell us more about your products and what you do with your company and the specifics of it.
Sure. So what I have is I actually have science literacy bags that really, and what they are is they're different themes, but basically it has the science inside the bag so that you can do with your children, and then again it's all hands on. So after you have the children and you have those experience with those hands on with science, then things build upon that. So it's kind of a layering effect. So then after that, there's some literature that ties into that science theme or concepts. And then there's also math games as well. And then there's always writing and doing some scientific drawing that ties into all that. So that way, everything is in a bag and it's all there for the parents and the family. So you don't have to go running out to the store to go grab different things. And then that way, and then there's also a journal in there for kids to really record their learning, and really because that's another way that is really good with learning is when kids are writing and drawing what they're seeing and doing. So and then that's another form of communicating their learning. And so that's what I have, right. Those are the products I have. And then also for parents that are interested, I can also work with them to really create some math, helping them with creating math consistency in the home and different math activities that they can do to build specific concepts depending on what grade level their children are at.
Cool. And I just wanted to mention on the topic of journals that writing a journal on pen and using a pen and paper activates completely different brain centers than typing on a
Mhm.
keyboard. So it's not the same. And it is very, very important for kids' developments to actually do that. And I wish they would actually continue to practice things like penmanship and stuff like that in
Right.
schools still to this day, writing cursive, because those are very important developmental tools for the kids' brains and their eyes and their hands in coordination um, and developing their personality as well. So thank you, Sandy, for what you do and everything. I am going to make sure that we put the links in the description box for our audience to go ahead and check and
Mhm.
connect with you as well. Is there any other way that people can connect with you and find out more about what you do?
So there's also, I have my Facebook page, Fun Family Learning with Math and Science. You can find me on Instagram. It's just Sandy Handrick. And then you can also email me at sandymhandrick@gmail.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn too at Sandy Handrick. And feel free to reach out to me on any of those platforms, and I will definitely reach right back out to you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Sandy. I look forward to having you in our future programs as well, being part of it. We thank our audience for being here. Any final words before we part?
I just really appreciate you, Dr. L, for what you do and really helping families. And I love how you made all these connections with how thinking about how our brain and how our brain takes in information and how it helps and how we learn. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing for families out there. And I just really want to thank you so much for having me on today.
My pleasure. It was great having you. And for our audience, we look forward to seeing you on future episodes as well. And if you haven't done so yet, click subscribe as we do more interviews in future so you can get the notifications. Have a great day. Cheers.